number 169. If you guys, as you're logging in, would be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button, and feel free to continue doing so throughout the dialogue. If you're catching the simulcast over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. If you enjoy my work and you'd like to support the program, please visit jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link, and you'll know what to do thereafter. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about the Jeet Kune dialogues. So my guest today is a guy that I've known from way back in the old days of the 1980s. I'm not sure if he was in Irvine in 1983 at CMAA, but I am 99% sure he was in St. Louis in 1980.
Definitely in St. Louis. You know it, man. 84.
Right? I did. Yep. Right. Okay. I was trying to find I have a photograph of that group, right? But I couldn't put my hands on it. But in any case, Makoto Kabayama, welcome to the Jeet Kune Dialogues, man.
Thank you, Mr. Woods.
So as I was telling you before, so I am fascinated by your lineage. So can we start there? Mm-hmm. I hope I don't butcher any of the names, but the Kabayama Bushidokan.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Okay. I am fortunate enough to be able to trace my family history back 24 generations through the Kabayama samurai family. My great-grandfather fought in the last great samurai rebellion. Many of you guys have known the fictional account that came from the last samurai movie, but I had relatives and relations on both sides of the real conflict, which was a major civil war similar to the American Civil War. So it was a major civil war. Mm-hmm. And so I come from 24 generations of samurai. And funnily enough, how I got into Jeet Kune, I was looking for traditional Bushido.
Right.
And Jeet Kune concepts was the closest I could find at the time to classical Bushido.
Now that's interesting because I noticed something. I think ordinarily Bushido is translated as the way of the warrior, but in your bio, it says the way of the peacemaker.
Absolutely. The character Bu is often mistranslated. The character Bu is made up of two ideograms or pictographs. And that picture means to stop the spear, the same as Jeet Kune. Okay, to stop the spear.
Right.
And so Bushido or Budo is stop spear way. But it's often mistranslated in English as war. And the character Bu or Wu means to make peace or keep the peace. Right. Whereas the war comes from the Germanic varing, which means to cause panic or confusion, which is a very, very different interpretation.
Right. I see. Okay. All right. So right there, getting you on the program was worth it. Right? Okay. Right. If nobody learns anything else, right there, that's worth it. Right there. Right on. Right. But I have to ask you this though. Initially, you weren't drawn to martial art because you started out in dance and theater.
Yeah, but one thing about being half Japanese and a little guy, I fought all my life.
Right. Okay.
I had my first fight before I was 5 years old. I was a scrapper all the way through dance school. I was lucky enough that I got scholarships and bursaries and things to go to one of the best professional schools in the world, the National Ballet of Canada, in residence for 5 years. And it really helped with my attributes, my physical development, my discipline. I had the work ethic long before I got into formal martial arts training. I did informal martial arts training all my life.
Okay.
But by the time I got to formal martial arts training, I had already been involved in professional level dance training for five,
Right.
6 years. So
Right.
yeah,
So,
it made a
so
huge difference.
if I read it correctly, then the formal martial arts started with your dad.
Yeah, I grew up uh, playing martial arts all my life,
Right.
but then my dad was asked to teach at a rather prestigious school here, the Takahashi Judo Club.
Hmm.
And so my dad started teaching kendo formally there. And that's when I started the formal training.
Okay.
Before that, it was all fun games. It was part of our life, our
Right.
play.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up with that stuff. My grandfather was born into a samurai household, and my father was brought up almost samurai-like.
Hmm.
Roll calls in the morning, all that stuff.
Yeah.
My own grandfather was a legendary fighter. Um, he was one of these people who wore extra layers in the summer and thin layers in the winter to harden himself up. And my family was from an area of Japan called Satsuma, or modern day Kagoshima, which is in the southern part.
Okay.
And we were considered almost old fashioned in that we were hardcore samurai.
Right. Hmm.
And the second largest province in Japan, and hereditary rulers of that area. And we were a branch of the daimyo family, and a pretty powerful samurai family.
Yeah.
Grew up with that background.
So when your dad started teaching then at Takahashi, that you got serious.
What happened is I started, really is what happened is I started talking with my grandfather in depth
Ah.
about Bushido.
Okay.
He didn't so much teach me the physical techniques as he taught me the philosophy.
Yeah.
And when I got into, in fact, what I was looking for was that, on one hand, the practicality of the physically well-rounded samurai that was able to fight or able to deal with any physical situation. But at the same time, I wanted that, for lack of a better word, philosophy or spirituality that I got from the behavior code of the quintessential samurai, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Okay.
Now, the code of the samurai of Bushido has often been twisted and mistranslated, much just like any other philosophy, doctrine, etc.
Mhm.
And today, to a lot of people, Bushido is almost um, hmm, um, a behavioral code instead of a moral code, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Um, there's certain things that I was taught in the warrior principle, in the Kikudo area, and the Bushido. To me, it's almost all the same.
Mhm.
Mentality, um, things like the most important one I think is obvious is what they call giri,
What's that?
Giri, and it's usually translated in most people's interpretation of Bushido as duty, and then it's further translated to obedience.
Okay.
Um, and it's usually thought of in modern terms as duty or loyalty to the Lord, your commanding officer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, my grandfather, again, he was born into a samurai family. I have to make that clear because he knew what he was talking about. He told me that giri, a samurai's duty, was to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Okay.
Mhm.
That their duty was to help those who needed help, to help those less fortunate. That was our duty. Our duty
So,
was to the greater good of the
right.
people, not to an individual. And that's
Okay.
very different.
Okay. That explains then the portion in your bio that I read about, which was you doing security work pro bono
Yes.
for victims of assault, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, of all the sort of difficult times I've had in my life, most of them come from situations like that, helping other people. I don't need protection,
Right.
but a lot of other people unfortunately did. And
Yeah.
that's also how I got into teaching full time. Is I never got into this hoping to be a teacher. That was never my aspirations. I was just a
Oh,
student.
really?
I never had any uh, aspirations for certificates or any of that stuff.
Right.
What I found though was that in going around defending people or helping people after the fact, it was futile and exhausting.
Okay.
I had to find a way to be more efficient, and
Okay.
teaching was more efficient. I could teach a dozen women at a time
Right.
instead of going one at a time afterwards to try to clean up the mess that some thug had left behind.
Okay. So proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly. Cheat.
Yeah.
Got to
Yeah.
intercept.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And also prepare them for
Exactly.
the adventure of life, right?
Exactly. Teach a
Yeah.
man to fish, teach a woman to fish,
Dig
teach a
it.
woman to fight, a man to fight.
I dig it.
And I can save many more people than one at
Right.
a time cleaning
Yeah.
up. And that's part of that thing.
Okay.
As a
So,
fighter growing up,
right.
I
At
ended up having to fight.
Takahashi, your dad taught kendo.
Right.
What would be some of the most valuable lessons you got from the study of kendo?
Now, here's the interesting thing, is that I got into Jeet Kune because I was looking for Bushido. And then I was teaching Bushido through Jeet Kune. Now, after whatever, 84, what is it now? Many years, I'm back teaching Jeet Kune concepts through Budo.
Yeah.
I'm now using Kendo to teach centerline, explosiveness, sensitivity, timing, rhythm, flow, fractals, void.
Right.
We spent 15 hours discussing the Book of Five Rings in 3 separate seminars recently. It's all about fighting. It's not just philosophy. This is functional stuff. This is application. This is functional philosophy, not just fictional.
Right.
So it's really interesting coming all the way around.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. And I don't mean to interrupt. I didn't know what I had learned from Kendo until I started JKD.
I see.
I was doing it for roots.
Right.
I was doing it more for the Kendo portion was more for roots. I didn't think I'd carry around a shanai with me or a katana.
Yeah.
But when I got into the JKD, I realized just how functional and how much I'd learned from it. I had no idea how much I'd learned until I'd studied JKD for some time and Kali and appreciate it. Now I teach almost everything by the blade first and then empty hand.
Got it. Yeah. Well, that's almost the Kali approach.
Absolutely. And if you go back far enough philosophically, especially the Villebray Lacoste Kali that we first got introduced to, or I first got introduced to through Danny and Vu and Larry, Guru Dan, sorry, and Sifu Larry Hartzell and Sifu Paul Vunak, for those of you who are unfamiliar. I don't mean to sound so familiar with these gentlemen. But it reinforced everything I'd learned from the other arts, that the Kali from the Villebray Lacoste family was the holistic system. It was everything from the sword taught the empty hand, taught other things from healing and massage, et cetera, right? So the classical Bushido was the same. And in Jeet Kune is, of course, as certainly concepts, is the same. I mean, in fact, with some of us, Kali is so integrated into our JKD, it's hard to separate the two.
Yeah.
They're just vehicles to teach the
Which,
philosophy.
yeah, which unfortunately presents a problem, out there
Yeah.
in the martial art world, because it's like, some people just have an attitude towards that. Um, your if I remember correctly, so let me make sure. So you said Takahashi dojo, that's where you did the judo?
That was where I studied with kendo, and then I
Okay.
studied some jujitsu here in Toronto with at the Hatashida Judo Club, which
Oh,
is a very
okay.
good
All right.
club
Right.
as
Yeah. See,
well.
I
That's
was
right.
mixing
And
those
we had
up.
a gentleman named, we used to call him Big Frank Hatashida because that's what they used to call him in the camps.
Uh-huh.
My family was in the camps with these guys, the relocation camps, the internment camps, where my
Okay.
grandfather used to teach. And so a lot of these people knew my grandfather and trained with my grandfather as well. And so I studied there for a couple of years. And I was still a little frustrated because a lot of even in Japan, they often, modern martial arts is just that. They're modern martial arts. They're um, separated, they're divided intentionally. I end up studying, being a little bit of a lay historian, and the way they teach the samurai was very different than the way they teach the commoner. It was two-tiered martial arts, just
Oh,
like,
really?
absolutely, just like the military today, and just like modern education. Modern martial arts were based on the modern military program.
Okay.
So just like the samurai, we'd be coming out like somebody who went to West Point. We'd come out a first lieutenant, educated in strategy.
Mm-hmm.
The foot soldier goes into as a private third class,
Right.
and if they're really really lucky, they'll become a sergeant.
I see.
To break that commissioned officer layer
Yeah.
as a result of classism, in the martial arts, it occurs as well. The stances were created for the infantrymen. The elite was taught mobility.
Look at that. Really?
So most of the modern martial arts we train today were designed for the commoner, not the elite. The segregation between kendo, judo, karate do, the colored belts, the uniforms, all that is passed after the turn of the century. Those are all considered modern martial arts,
Right.
right? Even styles.
Mm-hmm.
When I grew up, I wasn't taught a style of swordsmanship. When we started modern kendo, that was fencing. That wasn't fighting.
Okay.
We learned to fight with a sword when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then we started playing kendo.
I see. Okay. Hang on a second, because you're blowing my mind. Because are you saying that Bruce Lee tapped into something?
Yes. Bruce was a very traditional martial artist.
Yeah.
He was more traditional than the people at the time.
Yeah.
And what people thought was conventional martial arts, they referred to as traditional martial arts. But Bruce was very traditional. And that's what appealed to me about him. I wasn't a Bruce Lee fan growing up. He beat up Japanese. They were wearing their hakama backwards half the time.
Yeah.
Right? So I wasn't a big fan. I certainly
Right.
saw the movies. What intrigued me was his writing, his interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got interested in Jeet Kune concepts.
See, it just seems to me that everything that you've said so far, it seems to me it was this seeking of balance between, maybe balance between cultures, balance between the fighting and the philosophy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, even though we were considered in Kagoshima or Satsuma, our area of Japan, where my Japanese half of my family was from, they were considered very traditional, yet we were also very innovative. We had some of the first shipbuilding yards, the first millinery factories, the first gun manufacturers on a mass scale. We used firearms in combat. We had access to the outside world, which the rest of Japan didn't have.
Yeah.
We had secret access to the mainland and to foreigners through Okinawa, which we had. In fact, my ancestor led the invasion of Okinawa in the 1600s.
Right.
Was the general that actually led on behalf of the daimyo. And at the elite level, we traded and exchanged with the top warriors of the Ryukyu Islands and Tei and karate before it even was karate.
Did you ever discuss Tei with Sifu and Asano?
No,
No,
no, I haven't.
because that's what he started
Right,
with, right?
right. And Kempo, in fact.
Yeah.
And interesting enough, the name Shorinji Kempo translates to Shaolin Kung Fu.
Mm-hmm.
It's just pronounced with the Japanese words.
Right. Yeah.
So the original karate was China hand.
Yes.
And then later in the 30s changed to empty hand.
Yeah.
In a wave of nationalism. But even before that, it was just Tei.
It's amazing what you said, that the stances and that kind of stuff is for the commoner,
Yep.
whereas the real art focused on mobility. But that's
Absolutely.
a Bruce Lee thing.
Absolutely.
Bruce Lee eschewed stances in favor of mobility.
Right. You brace for impact, you get hit.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Period. Right. And that goes through cultures throughout history, interestingly enough. It developed in Europe and around the world around the same time. The 1500s was almost the establishment of, between the 12th and 15th century. And then after the 1500s, the conscript armies, the peasant armies, right. The lower ranking warriors, the stances, the cavalry separate from the infantry, the artillery separate, specialization. All that was a result of the mass conflict and class structures, which made some people less important than others.
Okay. Now,
try not to get into politics of it.
I know.
But the military development of martial arts was very much drawn to social construct as well, which is fascinating. But yeah, so Bruce really was a traditional martial artist.
Right.
And so I'm into JKD concepts because it's traditional, oddly enough.
So would you then differentiate between traditional martial art and classical martial art?
In Japan, the classical martial arts are the traditional martial arts. Okay. And judo, karate, do, aikido, those are all considered modern martial arts.
Okay, right, yeah.
Judo, all the do arts that you have today, by and large, are modern martial arts in Japan. So
jujutsu in the old days was not a specific style. It was training. Right.
It was fighting for real life.
Yeah.
And
so it would have encompassed empty hands, weaponry, stand-in, ground.
It was part of the whole Bujitsu package.
Got it. Yeah.
So even at my school, I don't separate my empty hand training from my sword training. I will show you exactly what we did with that blade and how it applies empty hand. Just like the Kali. People do a Sinawali and they go, pop, 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 pop. Okay, I got it. Let's move on. I've been studying this for, I don't know, again, since 84.
Right.
And I'm still exploring Sinawali 6 count.
Yes.
I'm still, and I will functionalize it. And I'll show you how it works, literally, not just figuratively, not just imaginatory. I'll bloody well do it on you. Right? And I'm lucky that with all my ravings and rantings, the one thing myself and my students have always been able to do is apply this stuff.
Mhm.
So it's not just some figment of my imagination, or I'm not getting off into airy fairy when I'm studying pararhythms and gravity and fractals
Yeah.
and science,
Right.
right?
But so there's nothing new, huh?
Nope, nothing
Right?
new,
If
nothing.
I get what you're saying, there's nothing new.
Nope,
It's just what's there that you have not yet discovered or
exactly.
uncovered.
And that's part of my whole thing with this whole. I look around and I know you have too, you've seen it. We see people who are going around collecting techniques, collecting belts, collecting certificates. And what are they doing? They're doing the same thing they did in one class, in another class, in another class, in another class, another class, under a different label, another name, a different instructor, collecting certificates, again, collecting techniques instead of collecting technique.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
I dig it. I dig it.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
Um, and and that's not what I did. I looked within my art. I look within these arts. I look within the nature of these arts.
Yeah.
And I haven't run out of discoveries yet. I have
Exactly.
epiphanies every day.
Yeah.
It's such a joy.
Yeah.
I'm learning every day. Every time I teach a class, I learn something new. It's wonderful.
Right.
It's such a joy. I don't have
I,
to look over here and get
yeah.
reinforcement over here. I'm getting it. And I
Yeah.
know what I'm getting because
Yeah.
I'm learning. I'm getting that joy, that satisfaction of the moment. It's fantastic.
I think that our generation, we got the best,
Oh,
right? Because
weren't we lucky?
yeah, I don't know if the ones that
Blessed.
came along in the 2000s, I'm not sure they got this.
I think part of the thing is that when you and I started learning this, the only places you could learn this stuff was in California.
Yeah.
And if we didn't live there, when we used to go to the seminars or workshops, they would teach us as if they'd never see us again. So they planted seeds.
Yes.
And it was up to us to explore what they said to do. They said, you can do this on every angle. So we went off and we explored it on every angle. They didn't have time to show us on every angle.
Right.
We weren't just repeating and getting spoon fed.
Right.
We had to go out and explore those ideas, make our mistakes, make our discoveries.
I like
We'd
how you
come
put
back,
that.
right? And we'd reference and we'd correct things and fine tune things and go off again. So they taught us in a very different way than a lot of the people today. I go to the seminars today and I see people who are very good at imitating. They've got
Well,
those drills down
I'm
and
glad you
labels
said it.
down.
I'm
I
glad you
can't.
said it. You can take the heat.
I'll take it. I'll take it because I can dish it out. I'll take it. Um, um, and they're great and they're really good at what they do and they're far better at it than I can. I can't tell them the 5 different labels, what this is in Cantonese, what it is in Tagalog, what it is in I can't
Yeah.
tell it the labels in umpteen languages. Tell them this is the 3rd entry from that drill in this system, but I can do it. I can fight with it. I can show them. So, but these people they've memorized it so well. But when it comes to play, when it comes to improvising, when it comes to problem solving, a lot of them are so used to having the answers given to them.
Mhm. I hear you.
And I'm not saying everybody, of course, a sweeping generalized statement, right? There's individuals that will always shine. But I find there's a lot of people who are just imitating and memorizing. And I think we need those people. They're great. We need historians.
Mm-hmm.
We need documentarians.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the same. Um, and um, and what happens often is then you also get people saying this is the right way, this is the wrong way. No, this is this style, not that style. And everybody has it. They just might call it something different. They might come to it at a different point in their life. I recognize why certain martial arts have evolved the way it has, even the Kali that we train. There's a lot of stuff that isn't in the Kali that we used to do, that we were introduced to, even the shapes, the forms. I was taught to always keep my blade between me and my opponent at all times.
Mm.
You can't do that with a sword.
Right.
We'll cut you in half.
Right.
I don't wind up with my fist. Why am I winding up with my stick?
Yeah.
They don't, you know, there's
Right.
things that they were fussier about. Now it's even Kali, watching it evolve in the last 30 years was like watching karate evolve in its first 30 years. Now we have belts.
Yeah.
We have uniforms, colored belts in Kali, right?
Yeah.
But people, that's traditional. Well, kind of, but it's a traditional from, you know, that they took from another art, which took it from another art.
Right.
Even
Yeah.
karate got their colored, judo got their colored belts from Europe in the
Right.
30s.
Yeah. And it's designed for the commoner. It's designed for the person that you lead,
Exactly.
the person that doesn't ask questions.
Right. Exactly. And you see the same thing. You see the uniforms, you see the lineups.
Yeah.
That is not traditional. I look at the old men in the park, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best stuff I ever got was with Sifu Larry or Sifu Vunak or Guru Dan in the backyard or at a dinner table.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's where you get the gems, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? That was where the organic training took place. That's where our personal training took place.
Yeah. Over at Hatashita Dojo, I think I read that you got to interact with a lot of people from different disciplines.
I did that just generally myself.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Not so much there. In fact, that was part of my problem. Even in the Japanese schools, I started finding instructors that didn't want you training in other arts.
Right. Yeah.
And that threw me right off. Okay. Because as the Bushido that I was taught as a kid was you wanted to train with the best instructors of everything you could.
Right.
You couldn't specialize as a samurai. You had to learn bowmanship. I had my first bow and arrow when I was 7.
Right.
Okay. You had to learn how to shoot a bow and arrow. You had to ride horses. You had to swim in your armor. You had to be able to do all these different things. You had to be a jack of all trades to survive, much like a Native American on the plains or in the woods, right? Any survival, you know, we couldn't specialize.
Right. So that led to the search, but it wasn't a specific search for Jeet Kune, right?
No, not at all.
It was a search.
Yes.
Ah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I stumbled on Jeet Kune.
Ah.
And once I started reading the philosophy of Jeet Kune, that's what intrigued me. At the same time, I was, how do I put this? The other side of my life, I was exploring custom motorcycles and rock and roll.
Okay.
And my legend as a fighter began to outgrow, and I knew it, outgrew my abilities. And I'd become quite a legendary peacemaker, we'll say. How's that a polite word for putting it?
Okay.
On the street and in the rock and roll industry. And at the same time, I wanted to improve and make sure that my physical abilities could stack up to my reputation.
Got it.
So the dual core of the physical training and the philosophical training of Jeet Kune appealed to me right away, of the Jeet Kune concept anyway.
I get it.
And so and then going down to CMMA AA and meeting Vunak and his crew and Danny Nosanto and his crew.
Right. Yeah.
Hosanna.
In the highest.
Right? That was like it, right? It was great.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like traditional martial arts anywhere, there was no prejudice. There can be no prejudice in learning.
Right.
Jeet Kune learns without prejudice. As Bruce so often said in his words, it's not a Chinese art. It's not a Japanese art. It's not a Korean art. It's an art.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it, as a descendant of the samurai, you might say, I couldn't afford to be prejudiced either. I want to learn, and I continue to learn from whatever sources I can.
Right.
I went to South Africa. I studied some of the South African fighting arts. I've had other instructors, and I try to learn from wherever I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I continue to do so.
Yeah.
Not so much in other martial arts, but I am inspired by other martial arts. But I learned from musicians and visual artists and all kinds of other areas, and apply that to my fighting as well. I don't know if that's making sense, Joe.
In '84, do you remember? Did you spend 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever?
I think it was a week the first time.
And did you train with Vunak or with
Vunak?
Inosano? With Vunak.
Okay. And interestingly enough, with Danny Nosanto, I believe that year he had Cass Magda with him.
Yes.
And you were with Dan that year, were you not? Guru Dan.
Yes. I think I spent my first week with him and my second week with Paul.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's what it was.
Very cool. Very cool. So Cass, in fact, was the first Canadian. But what Cass did is he stayed down there, and I came back.
Okay, see, you just outed me, because I always refer to my favorite Canadian JKD senior. Some people know who I'm talking about, but a lot of people don't. You just outed me.
There you go, man. There you go. Right?
Yeah.
Now, what was interesting about that, and I don't know about your week with Vu, but Dan had, I don't know how many people were in your class. It was a good number.
Oh, yeah.
And he had Cass assisting him only. There was only a dozen of us in Vunak's class, and he had 5 apprentices helping him. We had 1 instructor for each 2 of us.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
9 to 5. And those seminars, remember, in those days were 9 to 5. Those weren't the short ones they do today. Right?
Yeah.
They were 9 to 5. And we had evening classes some of the times.
Right. The demonstrations and all that stuff.
And the weekends.
Right. Well, that's how I ended up signing up for Paul, because in '83, Paul didn't have a class.
Right.
But he did a demo.
Right.
And he turned his demo into a class. So that's when I became aware of his methodology, of his approach, which is an approach partially that I use to this day.
Right. For sure.
So I signed up deliberately with him the following year.
Right.
Because I wanted to get more of his approach.
Sure.
Yeah.
And he continues to credit it to Guru Dan. He always credits that to Guru Dan. So, for those who haven't seen that side of Guru Dan, we know there's a side in there that a lot of people haven't seen.
Yeah.
Functional.
Yes.
The street fighter in Guru Dan, you might say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The philosopher.
Did you go back in '85, or did you just do 1 year at St. Louis?
I did 2 years there, and then I started training with Vu in California.
Okay, so then you would have gone back in '85, which is when we were introduced to Ajahn Chai.
Yep.
Were you? But were
I
you
did
in that
not
session?
train with Ajahn Chai though.
Okay.
I stuck with Vu, and then I got in with Sifu Larry through my good friend Paul Irish, who's one of my training partners here in Canada.
Okay.
Who was Larry's, Sifu Larry's, the late Sifu Larry Hartzell. For those of you who have not met with him and trained with him, absolutely genius, brilliant man, quiet, soft-spoken, brilliant man.
We were both pretty skinny at that time. I was
you
scared.
and I remember.
I was scared of Larry.
We were little gaffers.
Yeah, he was a big American guy. I was scared of him. I never wanted him to touch me.
And that's partly because he always left a mark. If I went to a Larry Hartzell seminar, I didn't come back with hand marks on my forearms, my girlfriend would ask me where I'd been.
Yeah. So in addition to St. Louis, you went out to LA as well.
Yeah, I spent the next umpteen years going back and forth to LA, and I sponsored Vu up here in Canada a couple of times, and you know that was just the beginning of the seminar age.
Right. Yes.
And the camps in the Midwest, mid-Michigan camps, and so on and so forth, and that was and upstate New York, as you said earlier. A lot of these great.
What do you think might have happened if there had been no seminar age?
I think that many of us, like yourself and myself, who got introduced, if we had at least got introduced the way we did, we may eventually end up somewhere close to where we are now through our own exploration. It would have just taken us a lot longer. It would have been a lot harder.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
We were blessed, weren't we?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, we got exposed to some fantastic stuff from some fantastic people. Guru Dan was always introducing us to good people. I got in with, I met Hicks and Gracie in the early 90s.
Right.
When Paul Vunak was training with them, when the shoot thing was coming up. I was also doing that stuff. And we were so blessed. And one thing about that is, again, in my experience, most of what I got from these guys, including people like Pendekar Paul Dutoit, all these people like that in those days we got exposed to really great fundamentals. And again, the seeds that allowed us to explore those fundamentals for a lifetime. Yeah. I see people today, because I'm sorry, folks, a lot of people get handed stuff. They don't take the time to explore those fundamentals. After I left Vu's class at St. Louis at that time, the first week, he said, "You really want to get good at this? Forget everything else we learned and just do your footwork for 6 weeks. Spend the first 3 months gradually introducing stuff, but go back, spread this out over the next year."
Right.
And I did.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I went and I stepped and slid day in, day out for hours at a time, doing nothing but the fundamentals.
Yeah.
But those fundamentals gave rise and gave me the basis to be at the beginning, I thought I only knew the basics of all this stuff. I would look at what the guys were doing in Guru Dan's class, for instance, the girls that Vu was teaching us. And I go, wow, is that the same stuff? They'd learn all these really cool, they'd memorize all these patterns. I'd be doing this fairly basic, simple stuff, but it worked.
Yeah.
And our first reputation, I don't know if some of you guys are aware, certainly up here in Canada, is that our guys, my students in particular, myself, was known as a fighter. In fact, some of the schools here were afraid of our students, literally, because my background was from the street, and a lot of my early students were legendary street fighters before they came to me.
Okay.
And so my first reputation was as a fighter. And over the years, somewhere in there, I became, and my students too, became known as tacticians.
Eh,
And I'm wondering where we became from these. We went from being they thought we were just scrappers, to now we're the technicians.
right.
I'm the fussy guy, right? But I'm fussy
Did you
because
guys ever
I want
become?
this to work.
Did you guys ever become known as the instructors, the teachers?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, everywhere we go, and I set a very high standard here. And part of the reason was that, and I just want to mention this, I'm probably the hardest person in the world to get instructorship under.
Right.
Um, you know, many of you know that Paul Vunak in particular was a controversial character, is a controversial character, can be a controversial character.
Mm-hmm.
He's had his rough days and he's had his good days. Same thing with Larry Hartzell.
Yeah.
Sifu Larry Hartzell, the late Sifu Larry Hartzell, fantastic individual. Again, a genius, but sometimes controversial. I wanted to set a standard that was above reproach. I choose to set a standard in my school that they don't have to like me. They don't have to respect me, but they're going to respect the arts. They're going to respect what my students do.
Okay.
It's good.
Yeah.
What they do very well. And they do it well because I want to save their lives if I have to.
Right.
I'm not doing this for fun, although I'm having a great time doing it. Where I think as much as this is philosophy and art has helped people guide them through difficult times in life, which it has, very much so. Yeah. It's also saved some lives.
Yeah.
And so far, we've been successful every time that we've had to go through that. We've faced knives, baseball bats, the works. Yeah. Many of my students are professionals, as a lot of us veterans, right? And it works.
Something just flashed into my mind. You guys weren't ever involved with the Guardian Angels, were you?
I was.
Yeah. Okay. That just flashed into my mind.
Right. So I did 5, 6 years patrolling and training those folks, and working on their training program once upon a time.
That's not in your bio.
It might be somewhere, but
yeah, I didn't see it. I didn't see it. Here's what I saw in your bio. So I'm gonna say some words, and everybody just watch the reaction on his face. Okay, here we go. Relic Hunter, codename Phoenix, the Corruptor, Once a Thief, La Femme Nikita, Taking the Falls, Johnny Mnemonic.
I almost forget all that stuff. That's right. I did stunts and acting for 13 years.
Wow.
And I even hosted my own television show for a couple of years, which isn't even on the web there somewhere. It can be found somewhere, City Commando. And yeah.
Have you done anything more recently, or just
not
the 90s
too much recently? No. The last thing I did, it was a TV show a few years ago that I hosted a TV show. As far as that sort of stuff, on a what was then a men's, one of these cable, a cable network, not UHF or anything, but yeah, I hosted a television show called City Commando for a little while. But no, I haven't done any film work lately. I'm working with some stunt performers and some actors on the side, but I'll let them come out later when they're ready.
Okay. So I want to do something like that again, right? I want to call out some names, and as I call out the names, and I'm taking all of this from your website, but for people who may never have been to your website, I'll call the names, and you just tell us like most important lesson you can think of that you got from them.
Wow.
Right. So your grandfather, Reverend Jun Kabayama.
Right. So from him, he really emphasized Bushido as a spiritual endeavor, not just as fighting. And he introduced me to what I consider the real code of the samurai, as opposed to conventional code. Most people today, they've learned the samurai and Bushido from modern books written by people with a modern interpretation. And so he really introduced me that. And my name, Makoto, happens to be synonymous with the cardinal quality of samurai. So he really planted this thing where I had something to live up to. He told me, you are the 24th generation of the Kabayama samurai, and you've got some responsibility here, my friend. Right. That was pretty heavy.
Yeah.
That was pretty heavy. As a teenager, that really helped me when my friends were getting into street gangs. I was given my own family crest.
Yeah.
And that rose above any other colors anybody else could give me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I want to ask you this because it just made me think of this. You know, everything, like, people are more familiar with things in America, but Canada has some pretty infamous street gangs, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, any big city.
Yeah.
You know, we have all the clubs you have down there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think you know, it's like people call Canada the big sleeping giant, you know, north of America. Okay, let's do lessons from your dad, Michiomi Kabayama.
Sure. And really, yeah, wow. There's a lot there.
I know.
Let's just stick to the physical for now, or the let's say conventional. And yeah, he of course introduced me to the way of the sword.
Right.
And he gave me my first physical training in martial arts. And yeah, again, planted seeds.
Right.
And so important. Those fundamentals. I tell you again, I thought even for all these years, I still say I'm only training the basics. But those basics have so much depth.
Right.
It's like a bar of music. You can divide it infinitely.
Yeah, right.
You know, I see lots of Bobby in the background there. You know, and you know, it's like music and rhythm. Martial arts is music, and if you have the basics and the fundamentals, you can do anything with this instrument of yours.
Right. I like to think JKD is jazz.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is what's fun. I love this, right, man? I'd love to see you in person again sometime, man, and we can jam. Right? Because that's what I do with the sticks now. Right. We jam.
Right.
We you know, a lot of people would look at what we do and go, just like I used to do the avant-garde jazz stuff. And you go, what is that, cacophony? What the heck is that noise? Pararhythms, right? Sinawali 6-count with a male triangle teaches you one of the highest percussion theories and practices you can learn. Pararhythms. It's a 3/2. It's a 6/4 time signature. That's massive.
Yeah, well, see, now you're talking Dave Brubeck stuff.
Exactly, man. So you're right on. This is jazz.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where we're at. And like, you know, there's a lot of people who don't get jazz.
Right. Yeah,
they don't understand it. You have to coax them up through it. You have to bring them up through some of the other stuff first before they can see.
I play it for them in class.
There you go. Same here. Fractals musical fractals, physical fractals,
Yeah.
rhythmic fractals,
Yep.
things repeat, recognizing stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you want to take a stab at Inasano, Hartzell, and Vunak again, or you
Oh
think?
gosh. I don't think there's much I can say that I haven't said already.
Okay.
You know, Guru Dan, as I said, he is the lantern, as you know, that lights the way for all of us. He's a modern example. Um, uh, he just he walks the walk, right? I mean, he just is who he is. I don't
Yeah.
think there's any, you know, anybody who's ever met Guru Dan or trained with him, certainly on a consistent basis. But even if you've only met him once, you can see this as a man of integrity, as a man of spirituality
Yeah.
as well as physical
Yeah.
function.
Yeah.
So humble, so uh, um, and I will tell you one little story about Guru Dan is I remember we were at a seminar here in Toronto, hosted by another a gentleman. And at the end of the seminar, someone asked Guru Dan what he thought about people taking his material and teaching it themselves and claiming it as their own material. And their insinuation was that these people are stealing from you and misrepresenting.
Okay.
And Guru Dan was so marvelous. He said that as he was growing up and as he learned this stuff, he learned another word for that. He called it sharing. And
uh,
so I would say that what I learned from Guru Dan as much as anything else was that sharing was so much more a valuable way of 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 growing and learning and
right.
becoming strong in this art. One thing that you know that our instructors always told us was look at other people, share the art, share, don't be afraid to make mistakes and explore. And I think that's one of the great things they did. They turned us on to other things, taught us how to keep our empty cup, to refill it, and drink from other people and not hide and covet information.
Yeah.
Um, and that has really helped all of our personal growth. Sifu Larry, again, similar kind of gentleman. I mean, you know, with him, I mean, his experience, his life experience. Sifu Larry, with, you know, his tours of Nam, working as an MP.
Right.
I mean, people don't realize how intelligent he was. I mean, he was reading, quoting Shakespeare to his troops in the trenches and in the hellholes in Vietnam to keep them calm.
Yeah.
Because people don't realize he was like an English lit major kind of thing. This guy was an intelligent, bright guy,
Right.
as
Yeah.
soft spoken as he was. He had this reserve of strength and calm that was just incredibly inspiring. And I was blessed through my good friend. And again, I can't tout some of these guys too much because without gentlemen like Paul Irish, again, my training partner, I wouldn't be where I was today because I wouldn't have the connection with Sifu Larry that I got through him and the intimacy and friendship
Yeah.
that we were able to develop with someone like Sifu Larry. I was lucky enough that to represent Sifu Larry with the Grappling Association up here as well. The JKD Junfan Grappling Association was a great honor, I think. And so, yeah, he had a spirit of his own as well. Fine example. Um, Vu, I think we already touched on that. I mean, he really, Vu, and again, I got to stress to these people, just to people, these guys are not holier than thou. They're not to be put up on a pedestal. They're human beings. And some people, when they see the human side of these people, and I'll use Vunak as an example because, you know, he's ruffled some feathers over the days. And some people have abandoned him totally or written him off their resume. But because he wasn't always the perfect model instructor, he made mistakes. He was human. He'll be the first one to admit it. Right? I'm not telling anybody that anything they don't know. Okay. But I didn't have him on a pedestal. It's okay that he's human. I'm human. I keep preparing my students for that day when somebody comes in and kicks my ass. It's going to happen. It's going to happen one day. They're going to kick my ass. Right?
Yeah.
When that happens, don't suddenly go, oh, he's not as good as I thought, or this didn't work, or this doesn't work, or what's the matter with them? We're human. And Vu is human too. And I see so many people who got their start with him. He was a genius. That's why I wanted people to see what I could do. Larry Hartzell, he's a genius. Guru Daniel Center, these are geniuses.
Yeah.
I mean, no question about it. I want people to see what they can do. I want them to see that regardless of what they think of them personally, regardless of what they might think of me personally, what we do transcends all that. And Vu helped me learn how to learn.
Ah, wow.
He helped me stop collecting techniques. Right. He helped me understand concepts. He shook up my ego or any prejudice I might have had, all that stuff. He was great, you know, and without him, there's no way I'd be where I am today. Right. And so I wanted to give all these guys credit for where they took us and how they took us. They're not just weekend warriors. We didn't get our apprenticeship in a weekend. And just because some of these people misunderstand to a great degree what some of these people are trying to do. There's a big step, as you and I now know that we've gone through the programs, between being an apprentice and being an instructor.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Back then, there were so few apprentice instructors, it was like being a black belt, wasn't it?
Oh, sure.
Right? And so people get that apprenticeship and they think, I've made it.
Right. Yeah.
Right? We know better now.
Yeah.
Right? It's just the beginning. And I know that in the early days, Vu used to often, and he probably still does. I can't speak for him. He might come in here and tell me I'm full of crap. That's cool. I love him anyway, you know? But he wanted to spread the art. And I know that feeling now. I see people training now and I'm going, man, what about the real art? Is it going to die out? As all these people practice, okay, I'm going to ruffle some feathers here. Original Jeet Kune. Are they going to forget the JKD concept? Are they going to forget the philosophy where they're memorizing the techniques?
Yeah.
Same thing with classical Bushido and Budo and Kali. Are people going to take what they do in the, standing in line in their uniforms and belts for the original thing? Are they going to forget what the old men were teaching them in the park? So I see that worry about, is the art going to die? And I know that Vu wanted to get instructors. He wanted people to share the art. He wanted to spread the art. And a lot of us, as you know, also in the beginning, we were pretty independent individuals. We're all a little bit rebellious. And we don't always do well in groups.
Right.
And many of us would be stuck in our garages training on our own if we didn't get an apprenticeship and we'd gone out there to share the art and given the mission of sharing the art. And in sharing that art, we're learning how to teach.
Yes.
We're learning to become instructors. We're working with training partners. We're putting in flight time. So the apprenticeship process is to learn how to become an instructor. It doesn't mean we are an instructor.
Right.
We're learning.
Said, man. Well said. Yeah.
And so a lot of people, they misunderstand that stuff. And particularly Vunak, when he was trying to get people to train, to get people out there.
Right.
Right.
All right. I have a bunch of other names, but we'll do that the second time around. Right. This was this was great, man. I'm really glad we were able to reconnect. And yeah, we're gonna have to do this live and in person at some point.
Oh man, I'd love
before the two of us get too old.
Definitely
right?
We'll have to do it again.
Hey, listen, so in closing, I'd like to ask if there's somebody you can think of that I should bring on, I should try to bring onto the program.
Wow. Let me dwell on that.
Okay. Okay.
And
you know how to get back to me.
Get back to you.
Yeah.
There's certainly individuals that I respect and think may have some good insight into here, who have been around nearly as long as we have, and have insight into other instructors in ways that I don't, and certainly. So yeah, I'll give it some thought, and we'll get back and see what we can develop on that end.
Sweet.
It's been such a joy touching base with you again, Dwight, man. I tell you, like for sure, we got to do this outside of this environment again sometime.
Definitely.
It's been a real pleasure, and I want to thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, thanks for agreeing to do it, man. It was really cool, really cool.
And you just touched the tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. All right,
and
man.
I got to see where you're at too, man.
Hey,
sounds like
anytime.
Sounds like you know, we like I said, we could make some pretty good music.
All right, that'll be great. All right, man. You have a good one. Talk soon.
Thanks, man. Peace.
All right, take care. All right. That was fantastic. Episode 169, Makoto Kabayama. Probably the best place to find him would be jkdfamily.ca. He's on Facebook, but it's an old inactive account, so that'd probably be the best place, jkdfamily.ca. All right, so that's it. Feel free, share, like, comment, and I'll review everything after posting. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D Woods. Next Friday, more older school, vintage stuff. Next Friday, episode 170 with Seafood Bud Thompson of the Kali Academy in Whittier, California. I'm pretty sure that'll be 6 p.m. Regular Eastern time. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. Some of you I'll see next Wednesday for another issue of the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. Until then, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. You guys enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. Take care. Talk soon.